South Slavs before Yugoslavia. The South Slavs first arrived in the Balkans during the Great Migrations of the 6th and 7th centuries. At that time, the region was already a crossroads of Greek, Roman, and Byzantine influence. Spreading across mountains, valleys, and fertile plains, the Slavic newcomers established communities stretching from the Eastern Alps to the Adriatic coast and deep into the Central Balkans. Their descendants today live in Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. But in those early centuries, political life was far from centralized. Villages, tribes, and loosely ruled principalities defined daily existence, with local leaders often holding more authority than any distant monarch. By the Middle Ages, more recognizable kingdoms and principalities emerged. Croats and Slovenes fell under the growing influence of Hungary and later the Habsburg dynasty, while Serbs built their own medieval states, often clashing with Byzantium. Bosnia maintained a more independent course, shaped by its unique church traditions, though larger neighbors constantly pressed their claims. This patchwork of shifting allegiances left the region vulnerable. By the late Middle Ages, great empires began pushing in. The Ottoman Empire swept into the Balkans after its victory at Kosovo in 1389, ruling for centuries over Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, and parts of Montenegro. Meanwhile, the Habsburgs extended their control into present-day Slovenia and northern Croatia. Living under rival empires created two distinct political and cultural worlds. Catholic Croats and Slovenes aligned with Rome and the Habsburgs, while Orthodox Serbs followed the traditions of Constantinople. Under Ottoman rule, many Bosnians converted to Islam, gaining social and legal advantages. Over time, a shared Slavic language was overshadowed by religious and imperial divisions that defined loyalties and identities. Unity as South Slavs was not an idea of the Middle Ages. People called themselves Croats, Serbs, Bosnians, or Slovenes, their allegiances tied to church, dynasty, or empire. The very word, Yugoslavia, land of the South Slavs, would not appear until the 19th century, born not of rulers, but of intellectuals and revolutionaries imagining a different future. Even cultural traditions revealed how layered this identity was. In parts of Croatia, priests continued using the ancient Glagolitic script in church liturgy until the 1800s, long after most of Europe had adopted standardized print languages. The persistence of such practices showed how uneven and historically complex South Slavic identity remained. The rise of nationalism. In the 19th century, the wave of romantic nationalism sweeping across Europe also reached the South Slavs. Intellectuals began asking what tied their people together after centuries of foreign domination. They collected folk songs, rediscovered oral traditions, and promoted the idea of a shared language and culture. In Croatia, this spirit took shape through the Illyrian movement. Writers and reformers revived the ancient name, Illyrian, as a unifying label, hoping to rise above narrow tribal identities. Poetry, journalism, and cultural revival became political acts, suggesting that the South Slavs could stand as more than subjects of empires. In Serbia, the situation was different. Having achieved independence from Ottoman rule in the early 19th century, Serbia was already a sovereign state. Serbian intellectuals emphasized Orthodox traditions and the legacy of medieval Serbian kingdoms, positioning Serbia as the natural leader of any future South Slavic union. But nationalism was a double-edged sword. While it inspired unity, it also deepened divisions. Catholic Croats, Orthodox Serbs, Muslim Bosniaks, and Slovenes under Habsburg influence each expressed their national pride in ways that often clashed. Vienna and Budapest regarded these movements with suspicion, censoring nationalist writers and suppressing associations, which only fueled their cause further. Language became a battleground of identity. Croatian reformer Judevic Guy developed a new alphabet system and promoted a common literary language, laying the groundwork for what later became Serbo-Croatian. Cultural projects like these were inseparable from politics, as literature itself became a tool of national destiny. By the early 20th century, nationalism grew sharper. Secret societies like Narodna Odbrana and other nationalist groups turned from cultural revival to political conspiracy and violence. Their influence reached far. One branch of these movements helped inspire the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914, the act that ignited World War I. The Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, Balkan states saw an opportunity. In 1912, Serbia, Montenegro, Greece, and Bulgaria formed the Balkan League to drive the Ottomans out of Europe. Within weeks of war breaking out, Ottoman control crumbled. Serbia made dramatic gains, doubling its territory with Kosovo and much of Macedonia. These victories boosted Serbia's confidence, fueling its ambition to lead South Slavic unification. Yet new rivalries also emerged. Macedonia was claimed by Bulgarians, Greeks, and Serb alike. Liberation brought not peace, but sharper disputes. By 1913, the Balkan alliance collapsed. Dissatisfied with its share of the spoils, Bulgaria attacked Serbia and Greece, sparking the Second Balkan War. Defeated, Bulgaria lost territory, while Serbia emerged stronger than ever, alarming Austria-Hungary, which now saw a rising Serbia as a direct threat to its empire. These wars also marked a turning point in global perception. For the first time, mass photography and film captured trench warfare, devastated towns, and mass mobilizations, images that foreshadowed the horrors of World War I. World War I and the road to unification. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist. Austria-Hungary saw the act as Serbian aggression and, backed by Germany, declared war on Serbia. The alliance system quickly escalated the conflict into World War I. For the South Slavs, the war was a civil conflict. Serbs in the Kingdom of Serbia fought with the Allies, while Croats, Slovenes, and Bosniaks conscripted into the Austro-Hungarian army fought for the Central Powers. Families with the same language and traditions found themselves on opposite sides of the battlefield. Serbia paid the heaviest price. More than a quarter of its population perished, one of the highest casualty rates in modern history. Yet this sacrifice won Serbia international sympathy and political leverage for the post-war settlement. By 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. For the South Slavs, the moment of unification had finally arrived. Birth of the Kingdom, 1918. On December 1st, 1918, in Belgrade, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes was proclaimed under King Peter I of Serbia. The new state united Serbia, Montenegro, and the South Slavic lands of the dissolved Austro-Hungarian Empire, including Slovenia, Croatia, Dalmatia, and Bosnia. The name suggested equality, but reality was different. Serbia, having sacrificed so much during the war, assumed dominance. Many Croats and Slovenes felt they had simply traded one empire for another, now ruled from Belgrade instead of Vienna. Differences in law, administration, and tradition complicated unification. Regions shaped by Habsburg or Ottoman legacies carried distinct systems, making standardization chaotic. Religious and ethnic divides persisted beneath the surface. Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and Muslims brought competing loyalties into the fragile kingdom. Although most people casually referred to the country as Yugoslavia, the name did not officially change until 1929. The royal dictatorship, 1929 to 1934. By the late 1920s, political life had ground to a halt. National groups clashed endlessly in parliament. Tensions peaked in 1928 when a Montenegrin Serb deputy shot several Croat representatives inside the National Assembly, killing two. In response, King Alexander I suspended the constitution in 1929, dissolved parliament, and declared a royal dictatorship. He renamed the country the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, hoping to suppress ethnic identities in favor of a single Yugoslav identity. Administrative borders were redrawn to cut across ethnic lines, weakening nationalist strongholds. But authoritarian rule brought repression. Political parties were banned, newspapers censored, and secret police targeted Croat separatists and communists alike. Instead of erasing divisions, Alexander's measures hardened them, especially among Croats and Macedonians. Alexander's death left Yugoslavia leaderless, with his young son Peter too young to rule. A regency took over, and the country slipped once again into instability. Crisis before the storm and the fall of the kingdom. 1934 to 1941. In 1934, King Alexander of Yugoslavia was assassinated in Marseilles. His son, Peter II, was still a minor, so a regency was formed under Prince Paul Karađorđević, Alexander's cousin. For the next decade, Paul shaped the kingdom's policies. Though Peter's name provided legitimacy, real authority lay in Paul's careful compromises. But compromise in Yugoslavia satisfied no one for long. Inside the country, divisions deepened. Serb elites in Belgrade clung to centralized rule, while Croats demanded autonomy after years of repression under Alexander. Slovenes wanted guarantees of self-government, while Bosniaks, Macedonians, and other minorities complained of neglect. In 1939, the Cvetković-Macek Agreement created the Banovina of Croatia, granting Croats autonomy. Yet instead of solving the crisis, it inspired others, Slovenes, Bosniaks, and Macedonians, who asked why their communities were denied similar recognition. The agreement highlighted how fragile Yugoslavia's balance had become. As internal tensions grew, external threats loomed larger. Fascism and Nazism were on the rise. Mussolini's Italy eyed the Adriatic, while Hitler's Germany annexed Austria in 1938 and dismantled Czechoslovakia in 1939. Yugoslavia found itself surrounded by hostile powers. Prince Paul pursued a cautious foreign policy, leaning toward appeasement in hopes of buying time. But in March 1941, Hitler demanded a clear commitment. Under pressure, Yugoslavia signed the Tripartite Pact, aligning with the Axis. Paul hoped this would secure peace, but the public saw it as betrayal. Massive protests erupted in Belgrade. On March 27, 1941, a British-backed coup ousted the regency, declared Peter II of age at just 17, and reversed Yugoslavia's Axis alignment. Hitler, furious, prepared an immediate invasion. This decision delayed Operation Barbarossa by several weeks, a delay many historians argue contributed to Germany's later failure outside Moscow. The Axis invasion, April 1941. On April 6, 1941, German bombers unleashed Operation Punishment over Belgrade. The bombing lasted 3 days, killing thousands, leveling neighborhoods, and destroying the National Library with its priceless manuscripts. Soon after, Axis forces invaded from all directions. Though Yugoslavia fielded over 700,000 troops, its army was divided, poorly coordinated, and riddled with regional rivalries. Within 11 days, the country collapsed. Germany occupied Serbia and northern Slovenia. Italy annexed Montenegro and Dalmatia. Hungary seized Vojvodina, and Bulgaria took Macedonia. The most radical change was the creation of the independent state of Croatia, NDH, ruled by the fascist Ustase. The NDH launched one of the most brutal regimes in Europe. Serbs, Jews, and Roma were targeted with forced conversions, expulsions, and systematic killings. Camps like Jasenovac became infamous for mass murder, horrifying even German and Italian observers. Resistance and Civil War, 1941 to 1945. Despite the rapid collapse, resistance movements quickly emerged. Two forces soon dominated. The first were the Chetniks, royalist guerrillas under Draza Mihailovic, who sought to restore the monarchy and protect Serb populations. The second were the partisans, led by Josip Broz Tito, committed communists who fought for both liberation and revolution. The Chetniks avoided direct clashes with Axis forces, fearing reprisals, and at times struck local deals with Italians or Germans. Their cautious strategy undermined their reputation as a true resistance. In contrast, Tito's partisans waged relentless guerrilla war, sabotaging railways, ambushing garrisons, and rallying fighters of all ethnicities under the banner of brotherhood and unity. By 1942, Chetnik, partisan rivalries turned violent, plunging Yugoslavia into a civil war within the wider conflict. Civilians suffered terribly. Massacres, reprisals, and shifting occupations left entire communities devastated. By 1943, Allied intelligence recognized the partisans as the more effective force, and Britain and the U.S. shifted support from Mihailovic to Tito. Weapons and supplies poured in, transforming the partisans into a disciplined army. By 1944, Tito's forces controlled vast territories, established provisional governments, and coordinated with the advancing Soviet Red Army in liberating Belgrade. Unlike resistance movements elsewhere in Europe, Tito's partisans succeeded largely on their own, earning immense legitimacy when the war ended. But the cost was staggering. Over 1 million Yugoslavs, mostly civilians, perished in occupation, reprisals, and internecine violence. Tito's Yugoslavia, 1945 to 1948. When the war ended, Tito emerged as the undisputed leader. On November 29, 1945, the monarchy was abolished and the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia declared. The new state was a federation of 6 republics: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia, with autonomous provinces of Vojvodina and Kosovo inside Serbia. The system aimed to balance Yugoslavia's ethnic complexity, preventing one group from dominating. The government promoted brotherhood and unity, teaching citizens that ethnic equality and anti-fascist struggle were the foundations of the new state. At the same time, Tito's Communist Party became the sole political power, silencing rivals through arrests, purges, and exile. Reconstruction was swift. Roads, bridges, and factories were rebuilt, industries nationalized, and literacy campaigns expanded education. By the late 1940s, Yugoslavia was transforming from a war-ravaged land into a modern socialist state. Tito also asserted independence abroad, refusing Allied flights over Yugoslavia and even occupying Trieste briefly in 1945, nearly provoking war with Western powers. Tito versus Stalin, 1948. Initially, Yugoslavia seemed firmly in the Soviet orbit. But Tito, unlike other Eastern European leaders, would not bow to Stalin's demands. Disagreements flared over Yugoslavia's independent support for Greek communists during the Civil War and Tito's refusal to submit his army to Soviet control. In June 1948, the Cominform expelled Yugoslavia, accusing Tito of betraying socialism. Suddenly isolated, Yugoslavia faced sanctions, propaganda campaigns, and infiltration by Soviet spies. But Tito defied Stalin. Pro-Soviet figures were purged, dissent crushed, and the state doubled down on independence. This defiance became known as Titoism, a unique path to socialism outside Moscow's control. Ironically, the split opened doors. The United States and Western allies, eager to weaken Soviet influence, extended aid to Yugoslavia, the only communist state to receive Western support during the Cold War without abandoning socialism. Stalin tried repeatedly to assassinate Tito, but failed. Tito famously mocked him. "Stop sending people to kill me. If you don't, I will send one to Moscow, and I won't need to send a second." When Stalin died in 1953, Tito remained unshaken, stronger than ever, and internationally respected. He would lead Yugoslavia for nearly 30 more years, charting an independent socialist course that defied both East and West.